by some natural factors. And of that we hear that sometimes some bodies were unearthed, or even after 100 years, and they were sort of mummified by nature. So I do not deny the possibility of some prophets of Allah having been treated by nature in the way we find through our common experience. And I believe if a body can be preserved or could be preserved, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's body stands the best right to be treated like that. But that is only a belief. We don't know, we can't say anything. As far as his spiritual body is concerned, we can say with greatest certainty that it will never be permitted to disintegrate, and if it is forgotten and left out, then we will, as Ahmadis, we bring it again together, and this is the attempt, the effort we are making, we are dedicating ourselves to achieve. Another thing, this interpretation of the hadith was not supported by some other scholars, because in one roya of Hazrat Imam Abu Hanifa, he saw that he is digging the grave of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he sees the bones spread out and disorderly, and some bones which do not belong to him are there as well. So he picks up bone after bone and says, this is the right one, this belongs to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and puts back in the grave, and rejects some bones as not belonging and throws them out. Now this dream was related to some other scholars of the time. It was very beautifully interpreted, but the issue I am raising now is, nobody said that this dream is satanic, because Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam body could never be disintegrated, and you are talking of bones, so this dream has to be a satanic dream. When it was interpreted, then Hazrat Imam Abu Hanifa understood the message. It was interpreted that God will give you the wisdom and light to separate the wrong ahadith from the right ones, for usage in the inferences you draw relating to Islamic jurisprudence. So in your fiqh, God will give you special insight to find out which were the words of Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and which were just related to him but did not really belong to him. And this dream came to be true in that sense so beautifully, so clearly. The whole history has given the evidence in favor of this interpretation. So some spiritual things are to be interpreted, and one should not overmuch emphasize certain physical elements of these things, physical aspects of these things, which you cannot testify anyway. Why waste your effort and energy? How many graves of the Prophet you are going to dig to find out if they are intact or not? Right?
Right.
Thank you.
One more small one in regarding to the same
not like the small question of whether Isa Khan Sahib. Please.
On behalf of my mother who asked, and I remember you did.
Beg pardon?
On behalf of my mother.
Okay.
The question arose, and I suppose Hazur did touch on the subject of this on a khutbah a few weeks ago, that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to pray the torment of the grave, qabr ka azab. We are unclear as to what that is.
Spoken at length on this issue, repeatedly, and also I think during my question relayed through television. So you better wait for that question session to be released for the sake of Americas, and they will begin to come to you inshallah within next 3 years, 3 months, not 3 years. Inshallah. Next please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
My question is a.
And
short
who are you, by the way?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Shahid Bahari.
Yeah.
My question is a short question, but it can have a very broad answer. And it's almost a two-parter. How would you convince someone that's very rational, scientific, but very stubborn on the existence of God and the importance of believing in God?
You see, this question, as you rightly said, requires a very, very long answer. But first of all, tell me, how can you establish your own existence?
For myself, it would be, to convince myself that I exist, it would be very easy. But to convince somebody else that I exist without actually...
Will become problematic, perhaps.
Exactly.
That's right. And particularly for those who have not seen you, who have not heard you, who have no access directly to examine you. Can you prove your existence to them?
At this stage, I don't think so.
Okay. Now, when you said scientific, let's first understand the jargon scientific. I'm going to answer it on your behalf. Science as against arts is a system of knowledge which deals with demonstrable facts. The facts which can be demonstrated and repeated. Under the same circumstances, they must give the same results. Which means you must have a demonstrable commodity or entity before you and examine it. Can you say the same of God?
No.
The way God is described, or He describes Himself, He goes beyond our reach to catch Him, to hold Him in files of scientific laboratory and examine Him.
There's no parameters.
So there is no question of scientific evidence at all, under the strict terminology of science. Now, conviction. Let's come to that part. You are still convinced of so many things of which you have no scientific proof. That is to say, you have no scientific knowledge enough yourself to even examine a so-called proof. You see, there are people in Afghanistan who don't know the ABC of physics and chemistry, and yet they believe in radio, in even television. Why do they believe? Because they receive the signals in the form of audio or video, pictures and sounds, and they can't deny. So if messages are received, they become an evidence, but not necessarily reproducible evidence. Because in cases of most people, they can't even understand the phenomenon. How can they work on it and reproduce it and satisfy themselves? So hearing and seeing become instruments for expanding your knowledge and taking you into the realm of the unknown. Right? Now, when you come to the question of God, there's so many possible ways of reaching a positive conclusion as to the existence of God. There are two things mentioned in principle by the Holy Quran. The one is the study of the afaq around you, the horizons before you. That is the objective study. And the second is having an introspective study with reference to your own self. And when you spread these arguments and into various sections, then so many chapters appear dealing individually with one aspect or another of the evidence in favor of the existence of God. But that would be a very long answer again, as I told you. But I'm coming to the last bit. I refer to you to study yourself introspectively. You have a will. You have a vision. You can reach out things beyond this hall,